and that is Zach Edey from Purdue, Derek. And he's 7'4", a guy who averages 20 plus, close to 12 rebounds, shot it in terms of field goal percentage very high because he plays very close to the rim, folks. What you want from a guy who is 7'4" and is a big dude. So when you look at Zach Edey for the situation here potentially, and just a player translating into the NBA, what are you looking at from Zach Edey, and how would that fit here in Philadelphia?
Well, he's huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
Massive.
7'4",
Big boy.
7'11" wingspan, 9'7" standing reach.
How tall is Boban? 7'4", 7'5"?
Right around there.
Yeah.
I forget exactly
Okay.
where.
All right.
But Boban-esque. Look, he's a skilled post-up big man who rebounds the heck out of the ball. And because he's huge, can block shots. It really, and you're going to play him in a drop almost every time. You're going to run offense off the bench through him, in theory. Certainly, that's the way it was, not off the bench, but running offense through him at Purdue. He had a massive...
That's a new one.
We talk a lot. Every now and then it doesn't come out.
Sound like
right.
a Jetsons character. Gazoo.
He had a massive usage rate the last 2 years. He, I think, got better as a passer. He's not a great passer, but he will make these simple reads that he has to, especially when double teamed. He will do a little bit of rim running because he has good hands and he's tall and he's a big target, but you didn't really see a lot of short roll type stuff. And I think that's one area where when you're projecting him in the NBA, he's going to get post ups. He's still 7'4". He's got pretty good touch. It's not just that he's big, but he's got a hook shot. I think he's developed that over both shoulders, especially over the last few years. He's gotten better at that. He can get to his moves, and I think he will have matchups where he'll get to his moves effectively in the NBA as well. Just not as consistently and not against every matchup like he could in college. So you're going to need him to do more rim running. Because of that, I would like to have seen more maybe passing out of the short roll because you're going to need to build that with Maxey. But really the question mark, it's one thing to have questions offensively. You'd love to see a mid-range jumper. He didn't really have much of a mid-range jumper. He was an okay foul shooter, but never really in game. But the questions come defensively. And if you draft him, you're locked into playing one scheme defensively. He's going to be a drop big. I think he can actually, I think he held his own the last couple of years at Purdue in a drop, in part because he's huge. And
we're going to just continue to say this guy's a unit, an absolute unit.
I think he probably moves his feet better than someone like Boban.
He does. Yeah, he does.
And has improved over the course of his time at Purdue.
I think because of his size and because he's not a complete stiff defensively, he impacts more shots in a drop than I think maybe he's given credit for. Obviously, that's going to be tougher in the NBA when ball handlers are pulling up from 27 feet out and there's more space and you're going to ask more of him. And I have significant concerns there. But part of my concern is I just don't want to get completely pigeonholed into one scheme. I would like some scheme diversity on both sides of the floor, by the way. I would like to be able to run a 5-out at times on offense. I'd like to be able to run switching. Not that you're going to be able to be a true switch with Tyrese Maxey, but I'd like to do more of that with the second unit. He doesn't really add any of that. He's just a lesser version of the scheme you already run, lesser version on both ends. But I'm not completely if the Sixers weren't in the salary cap space that I laid out to start this, I wouldn't be completely against Zach Edey, even though he's an archetype that I don't really like for the most part. I think he's actually a pretty good version of that archetype, or at least a pretty reasonable chance to be a decent version of that. But he'll never play next to Embiid, and because of that, I have little interest.
You sound like you're on Shark Tank, and for that reason, I'm out. So I think Derek and I are going to be in lockstep for a lot of today. I like Edey. I'm not one of these people that's, looks at the defensive concerns and says, well, there's no role for him in the NBA. My problem with him is you basically have to full commit to his style in order to justify putting him on the roster and playing him, even in a 15-minute role. If he's on the floor, you are committing to, we're going to run the offense through him. We're going to get him post touches, because otherwise there are just too many issues that you're not getting the value out of him that you need to. To his credit, as Derek said, the thing I like is that he's just a really well-realized big. He's a big man who plays like a big man, who takes advantage of his size, strength advantages over guys, constantly gets the seal, constantly gets the good position, has the touch on top of that. So, if he gets surrounded by guys and he's going to face double teams often, I still think he's got a great chance to score with the hooks over both shoulders, going off the glass, things like that. And obviously he's big enough that he gets deep. That's an easy dunk on a lot of opportunities. Also a great offensive rebounder. Some of that is by necessity because he is not running up and down the floor real fast. So you might as well hard commit to playing around the rim. But for a team that needs rebounding, certainly a guy that could help them there. The issue that I have is that when Joel is off the floor and you're trying to build an identity around Tyrese Maxey primarily, I think Edey potentially cuts into what you want and can do there. It's not to say that you need to, Joel hits the bench and you run. But if you, however the roster fills out this summer, if you get some athletic wings, if you get some guys that can play a more high tempo style with Maxey, if Edey's the guy that's coming in on that unit, it doesn't really matter. Like, you're going to have to spend a lot of your possessions walking up the floor, waiting for him, getting him the ball. And it will be worth it a decent amount of the time because I do think he will come in and he's so big that, like, there are some guys that they're 4-year players in college, have size advantages, and then they get to the next level and the margins shrink and it's like, well, that guy can't really do this anymore. Like, I think Jahlil Okafor was an example of that, right? Like, he was a really skilled post up big, but was not huge.
Yes.
And so once he got and played like-sized players more often, it became a lot tougher for him. I don't think there are a lot of like-sized players for Zach Edey. To your point, Derek, I believe his standing reach is almost exactly the same as Boban's. They're like right in that same territory. And I think he's a much more polished player than Boban.
And like I said, I think more mobile too.
Yes, and more mobile. So I do think he can help a second unit. If you're just looking for a guy, like, we can throw him the ball, run offense through him, and expect him to score. And he can make free throws, which is a really good thing for a big that is likely going to get hacked and fouled and whatever. I just don't trust his ability to defend in space. I don't, frankly, trust him to get up and down the floor at the level requisite in today's game where transition threes, transition defense it's just such an important part of the game. So I actually like him, but I would basically only draft him if I was willing to full send my identity around 48 minutes of slow drop coverage, play through a big man, and I just do not want to do that.
That is another thing. He slows you down on offense, not just because you're looking to post him up, because it takes him a while to get down the court, and you're gonna be able to attack defensively in transition the entire game too, because he struggles to get back. In part because he's posted up deep into the paint, but in part because he doesn't change direction all that quickly. I agree.
I don't disagree with anything that he said on Zach Edey. Nice player. Liked him in college. Some of the stuff you just watch and you say, okay, a big dude can run like this. As the guy said, if you're playing in a track meet type of game, that's not going to be in his favor. But when you look at certain guys that are big, when you watch Boban and you watch him run, sometimes you're like, it just looks uncomfortable because it looks like it hurts me to be that big and have to try to run like that. This guy's a little more fluid with it. The footwork is much better. The touch is certainly there. And you can see where there's a place for him in today's game. But when we're looking at some of these other guys that we're going to bring up, we talk about, hey, you may not want a big, and we'll get into, as Derek laid that part out, Zach Edey is going to be a good player, but for this particular situation, that may not work as much as you would like maybe from some of the others. You might want a different type of backup big in this particular case in this organization, partly because of Joel Embiid, but also because of, as Kyle mentioned, the other franchise guy and Tyrese Maxey is their situation. So when Embiid is off the floor, you're going to typically run things through Tyrese Maxey. No, not typically. You are going to run things through Tyrese Maxey. And sure, if a guy gets hot and he has it going in the post, you're going to give him the basketball. There are 82 games and those things are going to happen. But when it comes to Tyrese Maxey on the floor, it's his show. And while he's unselfish, he's going to get everybody involved. I can picture him on the floor with Zach Edey and his blinding speed, the attack to the basket where he's going downhill. And if something happens, I can see, as much as we talk about him not being able to throw lobs, I can see him, because he knows he has a 7'4" guy right there, just dropping it right to him.
Get it somewhere in the zip code.
And he's going to catch it, and that's going to make his assist numbers go up. And we're going to be like, Tyrese Maxey's now averaging 25 and 8. But that is going to be sometimes. That's not going to be a majority of the time. So in this case, I'm with them. If they take him, we know why. We just laid all of that out. But maybe not here for this particular situation when it comes to Zach Edey.
All city like the mayor.